Siage stole an alibi. Perfumery labs don't sleep. They steep. After the boutique goes dark and the floor models stop striking their glass poses, the maceration room hums like a throat clearing somewhere deep in the building. Alcohol evaporates in polite whispers. Vials exhale top notes and confess bass. Blotter strips lie in a fan like promises you can't unmake. If you've never stood at a perfumer's organ at 2 something in the morning with a dropper in your hand, and the air so saturated with memory you could chew it, you don't know how a room can ask for honesty without moving a single hinge. I'm Evan, nose in training if you're being generous, senior blender if you read HR's dreams. I keep the lab keys and the caution. I police ratios the way other men police their tempers. My station is a semicircle of amber glass, bergamot bright as a dare, pink pepper with a grin, iris butter that forgives no one, labdanum patient as winter. There's a tin on the shelf above the scales that once held candied violets. These days it holds things we found in pockets before dry cleaning. A theater stub, 2 foreign coins, a clear hair tie. Relics. Explanations I'll never ask for. Tara, wife then, could make a room want to become the story she told about it. Beauty PR, event architect, she curated desire with a light touch and a carnivore smile. We met in this building when she rebranded our once fusty house as modern and edible. I gave her a tester of a vetiver we couldn't afford to bottle. She taught me what the word sillage feels like in a crowded elevator. We kept Wednesdays like people who know that weeks will eat whatever isn't named. She'd tap the service entrance glass with 2 knuckles. The guard would pretend to be deaf, and I'd be waiting in the maceration room with the lamp low and the air sweet enough to unbutton whatever you brought in. If that sounds like bragging, I'm building the room. There's a notch in my lower back from the edge of the organ where she once shoved me, and a bottle of ISO-E-Super forgave us with a shiver. There's a comma of a birthmark below her jaw that taught me how to aim a mouth. There's the way she would say, "Give me 10," and I'd take 9 and hide one under my tongue in case hunger showed up later. The first wrong thing wasn't lipstick. It was minutes that liked each other. 00:14. The service door sensor chirped its polite held open fives. Doors tattle. 00:19. Lab camera 3 coughed itself blind for 18 seconds and returned with the innocence of an accomplice. In the tasting room, 2 splits of Risset vanished with the stealth of professionals who intend to rinse their stems well. The lab's stainless counter smelled faintly of mint at 00:27, when it should have been all aldehydes and remorse. On a blotter by the sink, dried plum at the place Tara's mouth would have landed. I wrote a forgiving story. A bottle hand took his break near cold. A social team intern needed a private place to cry about an influencer comment and stole wine on her way to bravery. The camera sneezed. I went home to a bed that smelled like cashmere and pretended days are idiots. The next Thursday, the minutes returned like liturgy. 00:14, 00:19, 00:27. The week after the door held sixes, the camera blinked longer and a hair-thin strand of clear silicone winked by the drain, an earbud tip engineered to be forgotten. If you work with smell, you learn to trust the small treasons. If you love a person who works with image, you learn that treason is sometimes spelled calendar. "Let's open," Tara said, folding towels in halves while I argued for thirds with an affection that had seen better arguments. She leaned a hip into the kitchen counter like a sailor trusts the boat. "With rules," she added, and she didn't touch me while she said it. In our house dialect, that meant the truth had muscles tonight. Us first. No one from the brand. No clients. Before, not after. Protection always. Home isn't theater. I wanted to be world-size generous. not scrubbed clean self-erasure. We wrote it down on the back of a tester blotter and pretended paper could enforce anything. We lasted 2 weeks like a couple who deserved a plaque. Then she texted at 11:10, "Client dinner ran long. Don't wait up." The service door chirped at 00:14 like a metronome with a grudge. I don't set traps in sanctuaries. I adjust rooms until they can't lie. I dusted the inside plate of the service handle with coumarin crystals ground to a whisper. Harmless, but they fluoresce under my UV wand like an argument you cannot ignore. I rotated 3 caps at my organ to an irrational alignment my wrist could feel in the dark. Hurried hands crave symmetry. I laid a hair of monofilament shin-high across the path to the maceration tank, not to snare, only to teach a stride it had been seen. I set a strip dipped in indole, dirty jasmine, honest body, beneath the tasting table. Indole doesn't judge, but it tells time. 00:14 held sevens. 00:19 blink. The caps had smoothed themselves true. The monofilament lay coilpolite by the skirting board, moved aside by fingers that respect traps as a language. Under my wand, a constellation bloomed where a palm had remembered the door. The strip of indole told me someone had knelt near the tasting table and stayed long enough for room temperature to vote. Tara came in with the expensive hair that says I meant to be photographed, and a mouth brave enough to hold a script without cruelty. I kissed the scatter of coumarin stardust along her wrist awake with light. She looked down, added, subtracted, divided, a spreadsheet in a face, and raised her eyes to me. "Don't make me the villain," she said, not pleading, tired of houses that want stories with easy knives. "I asked for before," I said. "I thought I did," she said, and in her grammar client dinner counted. She had kept tempo. I had demanded melody. He came with her like men who have rehearsed entrances in mirrors all their lives. Mason Gray, lifestyle personality, video face, a barbered jawline that knows where cameras live. He'd been a paid partner on 2 launches. He taught a generation to say skin-like finish like a prayer. He looked past me at the organ as if it owed him a selfie. "We'll go," he told the room, respectful as a cat. "We won't perform in here," I said. I held the door because even buildings that know every lie you ever told deserve ceremony. The lock caught, the hallway smelled like mint and money, and they were gone. We separated with competence, the ruthless kindness of 2 people who know how to carry breakables. She took the blazer that made boardrooms play nicer, the bar cart, the Rolodex you're not supposed to admit still exists. I kept the chipped mug that steals heat and my bad habit of speaking softly to bottles. Lawyers in rooms that smell like toner, and whether moved nouns until they agreed to be civilized. Work catches you by the collar and makes you useful. The maceration pump began to sulk in French. I sweet-talked it with gaskets and patience. The vetiver we'd banked on decided to hate its own soil, and then forgave us in final filtering. A chemist from Grass sent a new captive molecule and stood over our shoulders like a proud parent. I slept with the smell of ISOE in my hair and woke knowing which batch would complain from the weather in my knuckles. Layla arrived with a roll of tools in a canvas wrap and a quiet that made even the loudest bottles stop breathing so hard. Junior perfumer, senior skeptic, she smells like orange peel, lab alcohol, and a temper sharpened on precision. Her hair is perpetually escaping its own clips. She ties on her apron like a woman who expects victory. "Which of your children is sulking?" she asked, head in the organ, eyes cataloging ratios out of the corner of their ambition. "The amber," I said. "It pitied itself overnight, now it pities me." She smiled with the half of her mouth that likes trouble. "It wants to be wanted. she said, and then she coaxed the amber into maturity with a micro drop of tonka that made the room unclench. We started with verbs that don't draw blood. She drafted accords like parables. I bent top notes into a narrative keyboard. She left a sliver of candied grapefruit on the edge of my scale, and I slipped the peel in my pocket until stubbornness smelled citrus clean. At 3:04, when the HVAC whispers its high note, and the glass jars decide they've been dignified enough for one day, we stood by the maceration tank and listened to alcohol hum a hymn you can only hear when you've ruined something you loved once and declined to ruin it again. The first time she touched me, it was my wrist, 1 degree of correction, so I wouldn't bruise the iris butter with a careless drop. There, she murmured, and my body remembered its lease included warmth. We aren't children. Speed is what fear wears when it wants to look brave. The first time we kissed, we stood in the doorway to the back storeroom because thresholds tell the truth. Her mouth tasted of grapefruit pith and a heat at the back of the tongue that should be reserved for courage and love. She kept her eyes open for a beat, not to check for cameras. There are none where we keep the discontinued bottles, but to choose me twice. My palm slid to the place at the small of her back where tension pretends to live rent-free. She made a sound I put in my pocket for famine. We counted to 10 and used 9, because the last minute belongs to the building. We made rules that sounded like respect, not fences. No bodies near open concentrate. No mouths in the testing room where other people put their faces. Yes to the freight elevator after last delivery, a slow-moving confession booth that smells faintly of cardboard and imagined citrus. Yes to the maceration room with the lights dimmed and the pump resting, our hips found true north against the steel like we'd been working here all our lives. Yes to my desk with the task lamp off, her thigh along mine under the notes log where we draw cartoon noses when a brief gets silly. We kept our palms off the bottles because we're professionals, and besides, glass remembers fingerprints like grudges. The brand's gala returned because money likes its own reflection. Skin and Sin, some copywriter called it and nobody got fired. Tara arrived in a dress that taught mirrors humility. Mason drifted behind her like an apology that hadn't been workshopped yet. We nodded, the mercies of adults in public. Layla wore black because glue hides in it. She crossed behind them with a tray of atomizers and a smile she had negotiated with in a bathroom mirror that never argued. A donor misused Chiper from the stage like a gym member misusing the word core. A journalist said alchemy with a straight face and a check in his pocket. I did my rounds because that's who I am when I don't have a better idea. Service door, obedient. Camera 3, loyal. Indole strip, bland as a boardroom. In the violet candy tin in my drawer, 2 clear hair ties and a bobby pin bent into a question mark lay among a peeled-off batch label and a screw that used to hold a cap we retired. Not trophies. Grammar around a chapter I won't read out loud again. I closed the tin with a breath I told no one about. After breakdown, when the last guest's sillage faded and the air turned back into a room instead of a decision, Layla found me at the organ with my palm flat on the wood as if it could teach my hand to be kinder. There was a crescent of wax on her wrist where warmth lives. "You look like you forgot to leave," she said. "I'm practicing staying," I said. "As what?" she asked, hip against the counter like she trusted it. "As a guest," I said, and the word tasted new. We took the freight elevator up and kissed under the emergency light, her laugh caught between my teeth. We stopped before bottles learned our names. We stopped because a room that has hosted your worst and your better deserves to forgive you in peace. When we stepped back into the lab, the maceration tank breathed its slow, sweet breath at us like a parent pretending not to approve. There's a version of this story where I go to war. I pull footage, I write a speech, I turn the brand's gala into a courtroom because pain wants an audience and I've always been good with a microphone. It ends with applause and a lab that never looks at me the same way again. I walked two bodies out of a door instead. I kept a sanctuary from being humiliated. I chose smaller verbs and found they last longer. Summer taught the bergamot to behave like a teenager, breathtaking in daylight, tragic in heat, brilliant if you feed it exactly when it asks. The new intern learned the difference between animalic and filthy. One is a story, the other an accident. The chemist from Grass mailed me a vial that smelled of cold stone and new paper, and I nearly cried in front of the mailroom guy who knows better than to ask. Layla taught me that wood in our organ behaves out of love for oil, not obedience, and that I go very quiet 3 breaths before my temper remembers it owns a mouth. I taught her the exact hiss a pipette makes when you've pulled just a microliter too much, and how to sleep upright against the coil of the maceration tank without ruining your neck for morning. One late night the door sensor chirped 00, 14 out of muscle memory, and no one answered. The camera didn't blink. The counter smelled only of alcohol and the ghosts of 100 bottles that consented to become something else. I laughed into my sleeve. Layla laughed into my collar. The room pretended to mind its own business. If you ever market test a scent in our shop at a bad hour, and a voice tells you to blot on skin, to let the alcohol go, to wait 3 minutes and then again, that's me when I'm being kind. If you catch a woman with a small smile and a canvas apron walking the aisles like she's tuning an instrument, you have Layla's permission to think better of your day. You won't see the UV wand unless the room needs a ghost revealed, and there isn't a softer way. You won't see the violet tin unless you already understand why punctuation saves lives. I lock the service door and feel the burr under my thumb where 1,000 stories have made the plate honest. I kill the task lights in their order so the lab can learn dark like a language it used to speak. The maceration pump ends its hymn with a clean click that says enough. Layla steals my last clean minute because she can. I let her because that rule outlived all the others. Tip the night. We walk the corridor with our hands in each other's pockets like we invented warmth. The city outside pretends to be unscented. We know better. Perfumery labs don't sleep, they steep. They forgive slowly, then all at once when you stop making them host scenes they didn't audition for. We don't have 10 anymore. We take the minutes we deserve and leave the others in the air where memory keeps them dustless. In the morning, a stranger will spray a ribbon of something we built into the hurt space above their wrist and believe, for half a breath, that the day wants to kiss them back. I will try to be as careful with the living. The rest I'll decant into the violet tin and let it click shut like a sentence that knows where to end and where to promise there's more.